First of all, thank you, Eddie, for your time. I know you're busy. I know you're in
No
demand.
problem. I like that background thing. I don't know how you did that, but I want to try.
Blur it.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah, I don't want people looking in my living room. I'm at home.
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I always like look round, just say, oh, just in case what we got over there. Do you know what I mean? So,
Yeah. I like your bubbled background though. Is that a headboard?
no, it's plain actually. It's superimposed.
Oh,
It's actually a wallpaper.
wow. I
Yeah,
clearly need to go back to Specsavers.
yeah.
But I'm not going to do the full let's have 10 hours of banter because I know you're on tight time. So first of all, thank you very, very much for joining me. I do always appreciate you giving me your time as I know you're in demand. There's so much to get through, Eddie. We haven't spoken for months because every time I try and get you at the shows, you're being dragged from pillar to post.
Yeah.
So
Good
shout
to
out,
talk to
mate.
you. Far away, whatever you need to know, I'm here.
We like that. Right. I've got a shopping list. I don't usually do
Okay.
this. I'm usually very impromptu. But first of all, the Irish card, the card that you had over in Belfast, very enjoyable card. The fight that I want to speak to you about on that card in particular is Paddy Donovan. Somebody that I've watched for a while. I know that Andy Lee trains him. I know that there's now a potential showdown being talked about, rumbled about on the internet with him and Crocker. Just your thoughts on that. And are we now getting, I don't know, overhyped on possible fights?
Yeah, I think it's great. You know, I think it's so exciting to be back in Ireland, firstly. I mean, we had the Katie Taylor 2 cards now in Dublin, which has just been incredible. Now we've had 2 cards in Belfast within like 6 weeks of each other. So quite amazing, really. And the energy back in Ireland is great. That was a real fast turnaround. We had to move venues. We were in the Ulster Hall, which is amazing, but does only hold like 1,500. But you still get an incredible atmosphere in there. Sold out very quickly. That fight, that show, all the fighters had about 4 to 5 weeks of prep for that show. So Paddy particularly was definitely not 100% going into that fight. You know, you could probably see it a little bit physically, but he did a great job to be ready. But he had to overcome a little bit of adversity. I think he wasn't as sharp as sometimes he is, but I like that. You know, he got buzzed a little bit in the round before, bit down on the gum shield and you know, come and stop the guy. And Crocker's a beast as well. It's such a great matchup. Like when you're making a fight, you really look at the narrative of it. You know, you look at, you know, Limerick in the south, you look at Belfast, you look at 2 different fan bases, you look at the style of fights. You know, you look at Andy Lee, you got Billy Nelson, you got the Conlons, you got, you know, all this stuff. And it's just the timing. You know, I think I saw Lewis Crocker's interview where he talks about being compensated in the right way for the fight. Absolutely. I mean, it's a 50-50 fight. So if I'm managing both fighters, I'm saying, shouldn't we build that? You know, shouldn't we have another couple of fights each? And, you know, and I get that argument as well. I'm probably a little bit more impatient saying, well, look, I don't want to lose that fight. We could do a massive fight for Irish boxing, could sell out the Odyssey, could do this, could do that. But I probably feel like there's one more fight for him before we make that fight. You know, for Paddy, people, you know, even in our team think I'm a little bit mad, but I would like to go to Limerick, you know, and I would like to do, I love going places where, one, they're really grateful because they just don't have those kind of events and boxing down there. And 2, it's just historic. It's something different that you just don't see. Like, you know, Copper Box, Wembley Arena, Copper, like that for me is like taking boxing to different kind of places is part of the buzz. So I think they do need to be compensated in the right way because it is a 50-50 fight. But I don't want to leave it for too long. Like people say, well, wait till they're world champions. What if they don't win a world title? Like, we could have lost the opportunity to create a big event. But at the same time, and this is why a lot of big fights don't happen, you have to deal with advisors who are very cautious and want to drag careers out and want to make money. And that's, I get it all. Do you know what I mean? That's their job. And I would do the same thing if that was my life. If I was advisors for both guys, I would be trying to have definitely one more. How many can I sneak in before we gamble? But it's easy for me to gamble because I'm just like a fan. I just want to make the best fight. So, but hopefully it's one we can see not too much longer than the back end of the summer of this year.
I like what you've said there. You've touched on a couple of things, and we do see it happen where there's like this ignited fire. Where do we strike while the iron's hot, or do we, back off and keep them warm, keep them simmering, and let's build something. It's a tough decision, but I guess that's why you're the promoter and I'm a fan. But I'm going to throw a spanner in the works with that. I've been speaking to a young fighter by the name of Kieran Malloy, who's the same weight as Paddy Donovan, who fights for, I think he's with Top Rank. They had, before Paddy turned over, I think Kieran Malloy won in the amateurs. And I think that's kind of like the Belfast Limerick kind of thing. So that is also a potential fight. I know you keep your eyes and ears to the floor. What do you think about something like that? Because apparently that's...
Yeah, I've heard the name. I've heard the name. I don't know a huge amount about him, but it's how big is that fight? What's the profile? I mean, you've got a lot of welterweights. Obviously Conor Benn's fighting this weekend. I'm not saying he's looking at Lewis Crocker and Paddy Donovan, but in time, that could be another fight that sells out in Ireland or in the O2 or wherever. One of my favourite young welterweights at the moment, and he's not too far from you, is Conor Walker. I've got a soft spot for these kind of kids, the kind of kids that basically you give a chance to on a TV platform. He came in as an opponent to fight Cyrus Patterson. He was brilliant in that fight, broke Cyrus Patterson down, won, took this fight at short notice, gave him an undefeated guy that was like 10-0, massive 140. He just went, yep, like, I don't even care. And then I go on his Instagram yesterday and he's painting and decorating.
Yep. That's Conah.
Do you know what I mean? And I look at it and I'm like, for all of the Olympic golds, for all of the world championship medals that we want a young fighter to have, there's a lot to be said about the pit bull, the diamond in the rough, if you like. And I don't know how far this kid can go, but I'm excited to find out, and I'm excited to try and help him change his life. And that's what I need. I need good fighters that are willing to roll the dice. And when you've got nothing to lose, like Conor, you roll the dice. Now, hopefully that won't change. He had a couple of paydays, nothing major. And but let's just keep that ball rolling, keep taking the chance. Let's match him in the right fights. But, Conor against Crocker, great fight. Conor against Paddy, great fight. Any welterweight. So I like him. He's a little bit of a one to keep your eye on,
Yeah, he's definitely a grafter, and I like what he said because he was grateful to Matchroom. He was like, I've always boxed, I've always fought. I just needed the platform. So it speaks volumes when when you hear fight, you hear it all the time, Eddie. I just want to showcase my skills, and I bet sometimes it probably ends up being like white noise to you. But then you'll see there's certain fighters that actually you did showcase your skills. You were.
But he's ready. He's ready to fight and ready to fight anyone. And I've got a lot of time for that. And that those guys will get work and they'll get activity and they'll get opportunities.
We absolutely love it. So moving on then, another thing that Matchroom has done is they've given us a lovely spring schedule. So we can, start diarising these fight dates, seeing where they are. And I've really got to talk about Sandy Ryan versus Terrri Harper. As you know, I get on really well with Sandy. Terry's a lovely girl. Sandy, should have been, in my opinion, should have won the fight against McCaskill. But here we are. Now we're having not a derby, but we're having some British rivalry back on our shores. Talk to us about that fight, Eddie.
Well, again, firstly, Sandy Ryan should be the unified world champion. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And she's another one that wants the biggest moments, wants the toughest fights. We've been with her for a professional debut. She's taken all comers. She's taken chances. She lost in her third fight. Arguably in a fight that was too early for her career. She won the rematch. We have a huge amount of respect for her, and I was gutted to see that she didn't win that fight against McCaskill. From there, McCaskill has a mandatory. It's all a bit messy, and Terrri Harper draws with Brackhouse, and I think, what's the biggest fight we could make for both of them? And I'll be honest, when I thought about the fight, I wasn't sure that I would get a yes from both sides because Terry's up at 154. It is a 50-50 fight. Sandy would have to go to Sheffield because that's where the card is. And Terry's a massive ticket seller. She didn't care. You know, Terrri Harper didn't care about, you know, obviously she gets the chance to move down to 147, which is much better suited. She's not 154 pounder, let's be honest. And it's just a brilliant fight. Like, it's so obvious to make that fight, yet sometimes so difficult. So I have to give unbelievable credit and respect to Sandy and to Terrri and to Steffi and to Brian Peters and everybody who just went, yeah. Like, there was no, oh, well, hang on a minute. What about this? What about that? Well, it's just like, what a great fight. And that's what you continue to get from the females is that's a great, like, they're excited to be in the fights. Sandy Ryan doesn't want to fight someone you've never heard of on a show somewhere. Terrri Harper can become a 3-division world champion by winning this fight. And Sandy Ryan can have a massive win for her profile and then go and fight McCaskill again in a big fight in America or the UK. So, yeah, both girls getting well paid. Like, it's just the perfect fight. And it's a great card in Sheffield. You know, Dawn Smith-Sapeda, great fight. Ishmael Davis against Troy Williamson, great fight. Campbell Hatton in a really tough fight against Flint. Like, I love the card, and that's a real standout fight on the card.
Yeah, we love it. And another one that you've done, I've got to say it, Jordan Gill versus Zelfa Barrett.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that fight as well. Talk to us about that, Eddie.
Just the same, exactly the same thing, right? Both guys want a world title fight. It's not there just yet. What is the best fight that can be made for you, especially domestically? It's an absolute no-brainer. But honestly, I didn't think Jordan would take the fight. And I didn't think Zelfa would take the fight. And they just went, yeah, love the fight. Like, you know, Jordan's the A side after the win against Conah, but he's going to Zelfa's backyard. Do you know what I mean? And they're just both really confident. And those fights, like I say, it's so obvious to make those fights. But sometimes they're the hardest fights to make. And I'm just feel like we're in a good time where boxers actually want to take fights. They're getting well compensated, but they'll take the risk. They believe in themselves. And, you know, there's an opportunity in that fight to move forward and challenge for a world title. And it's just a brilliant 50-50 domestic fight.
I was getting to the point where I was getting slightly worried that a vacuum may have been left in the UK because all eyes seem to be on, you know, the big fights, the glitz and the glamour with Saudi. And then you put out that schedule to say, hold on, we've got a couple of fights in the UK. We haven't forgotten about home. But I feel like in the back of the mind of some of these fighters, these like UK derbies, as it were, as kind of like the lead up for them to possibly end up at the, you know, the pearly gates of Saudi, where it's like, you know, the big money. It's like an audition ground.
Yeah, but those guys, you know, those guys who are in those fights, everybody wants to go to Saudi and fight for the big money. Let's not like kid ourselves. They all want big fights in the UK, but every fighter wants to make as much money as possible. But to do that, you have to get recognised. And, you know, His Excellency, such a massive boxing fan, he watches everything. The greatest example is Jai Opetaia, right? He watched Jai Opetaia, Jordan Thompson, and went, he's great. I want him on our shows. And he's completely changed the life of Jai Opetaia, you know, with back-to-back defences, you know, financially set him up and secured his entire life with 2 fights. And that's what can happen with those guys, with Dalton, with Jordan, with Zelfa, with Crocker, with Paddy. Like, but you've got to take that. You've got to take that fight. You've got to be in that headline. You've got to take that risk. And, you know, we've got a lot more to deliver for the UK. That's just the start. But I've really got it in my mind to make sure we have a real packed UK schedule in the midst of the Saudi madness, because we've got to maintain the position of the sport in this country.
Do you think, like, with the Saudi stuff, it's kind of like giving boxing, one for a better word, a kick up the bum?
Yeah, I think people talk about, oh, it's taking boxing away from the UK and America. There's a thing, it's called the world, right? What do we think? We just got the right to keep all boxing in America and England. Like, no, of course, there are key markets for us and we want to stage major events there. But if we get the chance to take the sport global, and more importantly, the chance to make mega fights at the click of a finger, how could, like, we're seeing Fury and Ngannou, the Day of Reckoning, Fury Usyk, AJ Ngannou, all within like 4 months of each other. We would never see those fights. Bivol Beterbiev, like at the drop of a hat. So, and we're seeing them on UK time zones. You know, that's another thing. So, you know, I appreciate some fans can't travel to these fights, but at least we're seeing them and you're getting the opportunity to watch it. And, you know, the job is always to deliver for the fighters, and it's helping us do that.
Credit to IFL TV. I watched your, not the last conversation, not the most recent, but the previous conversation. And something made my ears prick up, Eddie. I think I reshared it on Twitter. So credit to Kugan Cassius of IFL. It's the 5x5. And all right, Eddie, obviously you don't, I'm not saying that you watch my stuff, but this kind of promoter is something that I've been rumbling on about for a little while, because I just think it just creates that competition. So when I heard that you guys were going to do that, it's going to be Matchroom versus Queensberry, to put it in the most polite form, I was salivating. You mentioned in that interview that, look, there could be a heavyweight in the mix here. There's still time to sign fighters. And I noticed that you're going to be, you put on Emmanuel Odeazi, who is signed with a 258 on your next gen show that you've got coming up as well. Is that a potential heavyweight that you're thinking about signing?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I think the heavyweight division is always one you want to get hold of as much talent as possible for. And especially now with the Saudis being so liquid in terms of making heavyweight fights. And, you know, the 5x5 is fascinating because ultimately, you know, there will be, oh, sorry, hang on. Sorry, there will be 2 divisions from Matchroom, 2 divisions from Queensberry. There'll be a division from His Excellency. And, you know, I don't want to be in a situation where, you know, a weight class and you go out and break the bank and sign Terrence Crawford. Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, we want to win. And we want the fights to be really competitive to a point where myself and Frank and George and Eric, we don't know who's going to win. And we're sitting ringside screaming and shouting for the win. And, you know, we've seen the reaction that the 5x5 has had is as big as any fight I've seen. Like even Fury Usyk, like, because it's narrative, it's like conversation, it's debate, it's all the things that you want to see. And obviously bringing myself and Frank together, it's going to be ultra competitive. So it will all be announced on March the 8th fight week with Fury and Ngannou, and it's going to be an amazing night.
How is the relationship now developing? Because, you know, I obviously came into the sport and you and Frank Warren were never anywhere near each other. Watching the both of you as promoters, both of you have your unique qualities, both of you were characters. What was it like to, you know, break that barrier down? And I call His Excellency, I call him the puppet master, because he's literally everyone is dancing.
That's what it took. You know, it took. Look, we both saw the opportunity in Saudi for most importantly our fighters, but also for our companies, for the sport. And His Excellency was just kind of like the bickering was like pathetic and irrelevant. Like, guys, bang your heads together and let's just get on with this. And it was like, no, you're right. And, you know, listen, my dad, who had a big rivalry with Frank Warren as well, has always said to me, look, socially, you'll enjoy his company. Like, and that has definitely been the case. We've been out for multiple dinners and, you know, and it's funny the other day, I think sometimes people look at me, like if you knew my dad and you knew me growing up or saw me around growing up, sometimes I'm still that kid. Like I'm 44 years old. You know, I always had that problem with Chris Eubanks Sr., where even when I was promoting his son, I was just Edward, as he used to call me, like the little kid that would be running around his house trying to nick his leather jackets in Brighton. Do you know what I mean? And probably like they asked the question, I think Bunty said, what was the thing that surprised you most about each other? And his answer was, he knows a lot more about boxing than I thought he does, right? And not the boxing business, but boxing. Like I can't stress, and you know, sometimes I think I don't even back myself on this, I've been watching boxing ringside for 35 years. Like, I've seen every style of fight. I've seen every situation. I've seen every high level changing room. I've known and been around every high level trainer, nutritionist. Like, I and but I think there's always a perception that a promoter and like they just don't like. When I sat next to Frank in Saudi and was listening to him giving instructions, particularly around the Dubois fight, getting Dubois' dad to sit ringside, scream at him, shouting, do this. Like, these guys, my dad, Bob, Aaron, Warren, they're, I talk about 35 years experience. These guys have got 45, 50, 60 years of experience. So I need to, make sure that I use that experience wisely as well. And I am getting on a little bit and I am seasoned in the game. Yeah, but I know what I'm talking about. And I want to try, and as I get a little bit older and start passing the baton a little bit to guys like Frank Smith, I want to use that experience to help fighters and nurture them a little bit without getting involved. You're never going to see me telling a fighter how to throw a left hook, but I get a buzz out of things like Johnny Fisher and George Liddard and Jimmy Sains and even Conah being here in Vegas, like training in LA. We've got the Matchroom gym now in Los Angeles, like going out to Santa Monica, prepping properly, hard spars against, Mexicans, and like bringing fighters through, understanding what you need to give them every chance to succeed. And hopefully, as my workload decreases a little bit in boxing, I can give that time to those fighters to pass on the knowledge that I know I have in the game.
One of the things that I do like about you, because I look at the promoters and I look how they are in business. Business is always something that's interested me. I think the ones I describe you as a risk taker. You're somebody that's prepared to, like you did with DAZN, or it seems like all those years ago now, you were prepared to take a risk. You were prepared to like go abroad. Like you said, it's not just England boxing, it's world boxing. You want to be known on the world stage. And because of that, you've received a lot of, maybe criticism over the years, but you've dug your heels in and said, no, I'm going to stick to it. And it's like fast forward and we're here today and there's that inter-partnership working. The only thing I will say, and I've got to end this now because Matt is giving me my warning. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, I did have a few more questions, but that'll wait till next time, is Rhiannon Dixon, Caroline Dubois. Now, and I'm going to play devil's advocate. To me, in that fight, Caroline Dubois is the favorite. So I know that fight's not going ahead, and I know that you've kind of like pushed in or suggested, Beatrix Ferreira as the, what about her then? I think Ben Shalom did an interview on TalkSport because, as you know, he's not doing any interviews with anybody else anymore. So he spoke to TalkSport and he said that he received 2 offers, which he accepted both. Now, I'm a rookie. Why would you send someone 2 offers and they accept them? Why would you need to send a second offer? Can you just break that down?
I don't know. I think that whether people think sometimes I talk rubbish or not, this situation is very straightforward.
All right.
The IBF ordered Caroline Dubois against Rhiannon Dixon. Yep. Really tough fight for Rhiannon Dixon with her experience. Caroline Dubois is really good. Really good. Like, I give them all the props. Rhiannon Dixon says, I will take the fight. Right? I know it's really tough, but it's a world title opportunity, etc. We wanted to get home advantage. We sent one offer, I believe, to Boxer, which we didn't hear back from. Then we sent I think they turned it down or made us an offer. Then we made them a much bigger offer, which they did accept. In the meantime, the WBO come on to us and say, we would like to order Rhiannon Dixon against Caraballo, who had a good fight with Katie Taylor, for the world title. The team, Rhiannon Dixon's team, said, I think that's an easier fight. I think we should take that fight. We should do it in Manchester, etc. I said, okay. We looked at the IBF rankings. Next in line was Beatrice Ferreira, who is our girl. You've heard me on numerous occasions talk about Ferreira Dubois as one of the best fights in boxing. Rhiannon Dixon agreed terms to fight Caraballo. The IBF ordered, probably about 3 weeks ago now, people don't realise, Caroline Dubois against Beatrice Ferreira. We made them an offer to do that fight in America, I believe, or Mexico. We didn't hear back. They then decided to fight this Saturday, right? Under IBF rules, which everybody knows, boxer included, and especially the McGuigans, when you're in negotiations for a world title fight, you cannot have an interim bout. And if you do it, you disqualify yourself from the situation. The Dubois camp have been made aware that if they fight this Saturday, they will be out of the running to fight for the world title against Beatrice Ferreira. And they have chosen to still fight this Saturday. It's a nice way for them to avoid the Beatrice Ferreira fight, because as much as I rate Caroline Dubois, by the way, Dubois Ferreira is a 50-50 fight. Like, Dubois is bigger. She's a brilliant fighter. Ferreira is one of my favourite pound-for-pound fighters. It's one of the best fights in women's boxing. They do not want to fight Ferreira yet in their career, and I understand that. So if they fight this Saturday, they are disqualifying themselves from fighting for the IBF world title. And it seems like they're saying, no, we want to keep active. We don't want to be held up. And it's just basically a way to say we're not fighting Beatrice Ferreira next. So once they fight this Saturday, under the IBF rules, they'll be eliminated from the situation, and Ferreira will fight the next in line, which I think is a German girl. I think she's 7 or 8-0, and that will be for the IBF world title. And listen, we'd love to make an offer to Caroline Dubois once Rhiannon Dixon wins the world title, once Beatrice Ferreira wins the world title. But yeah, that's the situation.
Thank you for explaining that, and also thank you for being honest by saying, you know, the better fight, the more safer fight for Rhiannon is to go the other.
No problem saying that. Yeah,
well, that's what I mean. People don't know, do they?
If we didn't have that opportunity, we were in the fight with Dubois, 100%. But you know, she's got a chance to fight at Manchester Arena for the world title. She's making the right decision.
We love it. Listen, Eddie, it's been an absolute pleasure as always.
No worries.
Thank you so much for your time. And mate, I might see you soon. I don't know.
Absolutely. Not long. Next week somewhere if you're down.
People say I'm toxic, and honestly, I don't care.